Hey everybody, it's Lady Kaylah here, and welcome to the Geekdom. Today I'm going to do Season 7, Episode 3 Game of Thrones review called The Queen's Justice. And I want to start off with this episode review with Daenerys and Jon Snow meeting. It was inevitable that they met. I was hoping that the show would throw us in for a little bit of a loop, but they didn't. They decided to have them meet. But it is what everybody's been waiting for. Whether you've read the books or you've watched the show, everybody's been waiting for this meetup. So glad they did it because you might as well just get it over with. Anyways, I actually really liked the way that the show handled their meeting. I'm sure everybody, me included, thought that upon meeting there would be a lot of sexual attention and they were going to end up in bed together. But the reason why I liked their meeting is for a couple of reasons. I really liked how they captured how youthful Jon Snow and Daenerys were. They had, Tyrion and Davos kind of speaking for them at times, and we had to remember that Jon Snow and Daenerys are young rulers, and they're not quite used to doing leadership stuff. Daenerys is a lot more practiced at it than Jon Snow is, but at the same time I really like how they were very useful, and Daenerys kind of just wants Jon Snow to bend the knee. Jon Snow can't do it. They're both good reasons for either side, and I'm really glad that at the end they kind of just let it go. Daenerys didn't try to force him or hold him prisoner or anything like that. She didn't even throw much of a fit, even though she got mad at him for not calling her queen and for not bending the knee. She did get a little bristly at that, but I felt like it was generally handled well. I like how their youth showed, and I liked how Tyrion got a lot more scenes, and we got to see him have some input this season because I feel like I've missed him so much as a character, and Davos is an awesome character as well. So everyone likes to say that Daenerys is really entitled and pushy when it comes to her leadership, and here when she's trying to force Jon Snow to bend the knee, well, not force, but convince him to bend the knee, a lot of people probably felt that coming out again. But we have to remember that if she gets Jon Snow to bend the knee, she gets like a big chunk of the kingdom without having to shed any blood. So it makes sense for her to want Jon Snow to bend the knee, because politically it would be a very awesome victory for her, and it would be a victory that didn't involve bloodshed. However, Jon Snow could not bend the knee because his people just elected him King of the North, and the Northerners don't just bend the knee to anybody. Jon Snow doesn't know Daenerys, and neither do his men. And also, Jon Snow's not going to bend the knee without talking to his people first either. I felt a lot of the tiff could have been avoided if Jon Snow just straight up told Daenerys, like, hey, I can't bend the knee to you, because if I do, I'm going to lose the loyalty of my followers, and my army will get disbanded, and I won't have protection from the Nightwalkers. I would not be able to protect the North or all of Westeros for that matter. And I feel like even though Daenerys doesn't quite buy the White Walkers thing, she's unsure about it, I think she would have appreciated and understood, hey, I was chosen by my people because I proved myself to them, so it would make sense that your people wouldn't want to bend the knee to me because I haven't proven myself to you. So I hope they come to some sort of more understanding, but I'm glad at the end, Daenerys was convinced to give him, the mining materials, men, and so on to get the dragon glass at the very least, because at least they're kind of setting up a surface alliance. Daenerys isn't forcing him to bend the knee, and she's giving him materials, but she hasn't quite agreed to help him fight the White Walkers either. So they're kind of still separate, but at the same time they're at least not enemies, and that's very important, especially since Daenerys is kind of getting a blow on the war front. She's not really doing quite well with her last two schemes that she's done, and we'll get more into that later. But I also like how they didn't really have any interaction between the dragons. Jon Snow, didn't immediately warm up to the dragons, and the dragons didn't warm up to him. We didn't have any crazy mystical stuff happen, and we didn't have any crazy wild sex either. So I'm really happy that they kept it kind of political and professional, and that was our first meeting of Jon Snow and Daenerys. I'm glad they didn't do something over the top and wild with that. So we'll see how that happens. Next, I want to go into Sansa and her leadership skills. We see immediately that she's very capable of handling the situation that she's in. She's making sure that the men are fed. She knows stuff about blacksmithing, all that awesome stuff. And amidst this, she still has Littlefinger in her ear, and I have no idea why she hasn't just told him to like bugger right off. But he's sowing like seeds of like distrust within her, and the way we leave that scene between them, it seems like she's kind of buying into it. And it is good advice to kind of look at all possible scenarios, but at the same time he's making her a little paranoid as well. So I don't know if he's going to try to pit Sansa against Jon Snow or what he's quite doing there with all this talk. I always wanted Sansa to learn from Littlefinger, and because Littlefinger, other than the creep that the show kind of made him out to be, was a brilliant mastermind at deception and manipulation. And I wanted Sansa to kind of pick up on his, skills in those kind of subjects and actually use it against Littlefinger. So that's what I want to happen, but I don't really know where they're going with that, if they're going to do anything with that at all. So after that, Sansa gets reunited with Bran, and so I'm sure Jon Snow is going to hear about Bran's return soon too. The show doesn't really seem to be taking any route with Bran's return, other than by establishing that Bran is the three-eyed raven and has insight into all these mystical foresight and insight into the past and all that. Bran can see everything, and he renounced being the Lord of Winterfell because he has a much greater and profound responsibility now to the kingdom, or not even to kingdom, but whatever he feels is necessary of the three-eyed raven, because the last three-eyed raven kind of just stayed isolated in the north. I don't really know what the three-eyed raven's supposed to do responsibility-wise, and I'm not sure what Bran's going to do responsibility-wise, but he's definitely not going to be the northern leader for Winterfell. Obviously, Jon Snow doesn't have to worry about contending to him because Jon Snow is the king of the north, not the Lord of Winterfell. But this leaves Sansa in power still. Sansa's probably still going to be the head of Winterfell, and I'm really excited about that because I love her in a leadership position. She's very capable, and I want to see what they do with that. It's another bittersweet Stark reunion because even though Bran's alive, he's kind of incapable of joyous emotion, and he kind of says things very matter-of-factly. Like, even though he says he's sorry for what happened to Sansa, he kind of vividly brings up her wedding day, and that's obviously kind of traumatizing for Sansa. So we'll see what happens there. If he being there is going to be a benefit to Jon Snow's war efforts at all. And maybe it's going to be directly tied into a tool against the White Walkers. We'll see what happens there. Lastly, I want to get into Cersei and her whole victories that she's been winning. First, we get to see that Euron brought Ellaria and her daughter as, the gift that he was talking about to Cersei. And it's really... it bothers me because, Oberyn had a legitimate reason to fight the mountain, and then, Ellaria had a legitimate reason to be mad at the Lannisters, and even though she shouldn't have taken out on an innocent child, it was the Lannisters who killed Oberyn's sister and her, newborn. unfairly as well. So it's just this endless cycle of violence. And so we get to see Cersei have her revenge by forcing Ilaria to watch her daughter die in the same way that Myrcella died. And we also see Cersei's having some victories of her own. Jaime led the Lannister army against Highgarden, and the Unsullied, who were supposed to take Casterly Rock, successfully took Casterly Rock. But at the same time, all the because they infiltrated with a small little amount of warriors, and the rest of the warriors were on the ships that got destroyed by Euron's fleet. So that's a big chunk of people that Daenerys no longer has, and a big chunk of her fleet that she no longer has, because between Yara and the Unsullied getting destroyed, that's a big blow. That's a huge blow. And the Unsullied that are at Casterly Rock are kind of stuck there now. So they don't have food, resources, nothing. And let's go back to Highgarden, where Jaime gets his little talk with Olenna, and this is going to be the rest of the focus that I'm going to have here, because clearly they're setting up Cersei to have victories because they do want the war between Daenerys and Cersei to happen. So it's clear that they're setting that up as what's going to happen. Daenerys is not going to have an easy win here like we thought. But I want to focus on Jaime from here on out. He sees Olenna, and she tells him, you know, what are you going to do to me? And he says, you know what, I convinced Cersei to just let me give you this nice easy poison. And she just tosses it back like a champ, like not worried about dying, doesn't fear death at all. And she straight up tells Jaime two things, which I think are going to be important in Jaime's future as a character. She tells him about his love for Cersei and how it's going to be terrible for him because she's poisonous, she's wicked, she's done terrible things, you know, and his love for her is going to be nothing but trouble, and it's not going to be nothing but heartache for him. And then she tells him a second thing. She says that it was her that poisoned Joffrey. So this is going to be my prediction for Jaime Lannister as a character in the future. He is going to be stuck in the same situation that labeled him Oathbreaker in the first place. He had to choose between the Mad King and his father and the New Order, because the Mad King was doing terrible things. He's murdering innocent people, going crazy, on a power trip, all that terrible tyrant stuff. And then he had the New Order coming in, as well as his father being part of, you know, the New Order and a lot of opportunities for his father, and he ended up killing the Mad King who he's sworn to protect. So I think that the show is going to set up another parallel scenario for Jaime, and he's going to be stuck between choosing Cersei and choosing Tyrion, his brother, who's working for Daenerys. He's going to be forced to see all the terrible things that Cersei does and his love for her, and then knowing that his brother didn't actually kill his son, and his brother working for a queen that actually tries to avoid bloodshed and tries to avoid malicious behavior. So he's going to probably be the one that has to decide whether or not he wants, or whether or not he's going to kill Cersei, and he's going to be the one killing up another tyrant at the end, I think. So that's my prediction from Tyrion Lannister. Just the way that his last conversation with Olenna went is what kind of sparked that for me, is that he's going to have to choose between Cersei and his brother at some point, and I think he's going to actually end up being the one killing Cersei. So I don't know. Those are my predictions. Let me know your predictions in the comments below. If I forgot anything, you know, we can have a discussion about it later. Just leave it in the comments below as well, so I can do another video on it if that's what ends up happening. And yeah, thank you for your time. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It lets me know to keep doing more in the future. Thank you for your time. Bye.